so excited because we took a brief break. We had some technical issues that we had to sort out. Well, we're still kind of sorting them out, but we're at least able to get back to you guys with great content. And we just want to thank everybody for hanging in there with us. Today, I, Nia Ham, your regular host, am joined by my other half, your sometimes co-host. Who are you?
I am Jason Clark, sometimes co-host. Is it still Nia Ham?
I'm
Nia
sorry.
Clark.
No, I'm force of habit.
Uh-huh.
It's Nia Clark.
Telling everybody Nia Ham.
I know, because
Nia Ham is gone.
I still use my maiden name on like my medical records because it takes so much to transfer everything over to your new name. By the way, everybody, when we got married last October, I legally changed my name to Jason's last name, which is something I never thought I would do. Because I've been Nia Ham my entire life, and I'm still Nia Ham on TV in my full-time job as a TV reporter. And I always thought it would be weird to like all of a sudden become someone else. But I just made this split-second decision when we had to go to...
Since split second, it took you like 5 minutes as we're sitting there.
Okay, we're parsing words here. I made a decision off the cuff when we were getting our marriage license or applying for our marriage license. And I hadn't decided up until that point. And then they just asked me. And I thought, you know what? Of course. Like, this is going to be my boo forever. Like, forever, ever. So, why not? And I just did it. And I'm cool with it. You know, it works. What's really nice about having Jason's last name, Clark, is that my maiden name, Ham, is 1 syllable. And Nia is 2 syllables. So, Nia Ham and Nia Clark are both 3 syllables. Not really much difference. How do you feel about it?
You know, I have to say I've never actually given it that much thought about the syllables until now. I just know that whatever you wanted was perfectly okay with me, just as long as you took one of the names, either Ham and Clark or Clark. But now that your last name is Clark, you are officially mine, so...
Jason's kind of lying. He actually wanted me to take his last name, but he just didn't want to tell me. And he would ask me every day at some point, probably the same time every day. Like, so what are you going to do? Are you going to change your name? Are you going to keep your name? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? And
that's actually true. I forgot about that. That is true.
But it's cool. I think,
name.
There was a point in my life where I thought maybe taking somebody else's last name would be anti-feminist. But it's not. And as I get older, I'm realizing that feminism is much more broad and nuanced than people like to think. But that's not why we're here today, is it, darling?
No, I don't think so.
No, we are here today because we are going to be talking about a subject you and I know a lot about. And increasingly more people in our peer group, those of us who are millennials, other people too, zennials, and even Gen Zers, are becoming more familiar with, and that is long distance love. Yeah, it is something that is not for the faint of heart at all, and it's certainly not something I think any of us would choose to do if we had a choice. Well, we do have a choice, but I don't think it would be our first choice. However, in 2019, the world is a lot different than it was in 1990. When my parents were getting started, or I guess they got started a little bit before that, but still, around that time. And the opportunities that are available to people in 2019 are different than the ones that were available even, 10, 15, let alone 20 years ago. We live in a global society. We are more connected than ever before. And oftentimes, if you want to pursue certain opportunities, it means relocating. And to do so, sometimes your significant other may not be able to come with you. But you guys don't want to end what you have because you might feel that that's the best person for you. You found your person. So you make it work. You stick it out for a certain period of time, keeping in mind that it's temporary. And I will say this as an aside. Long distance love is not a permanent thing. It should never be permanent. And anybody who thinks it is kidding themselves. It's not permanent. So don't think, especially you guys who like to have these strange definitions of what relationships are. I know guys these days we're not actually officially monogamous, but we're cool, we're hanging. No. That's not what this is.
You should keep an open mind.
No, it's not. Long distance love should not be an open relationship, okay? And I'm not even a traditionalist, but I'm specifically talking to our folks, our friends, our listeners who genuinely care for another person and genuinely exclusively want to be with that person and want to make it work with that person, but just cannot live in the same city or state, even country sometimes as that person currently right now. How Jason and I came to be in a long distance relationship. I'm a TV reporter. I haven't always been a TV reporter. I was producing in television news for several years before I decided to make a career change. And I took an unconventional sort of route. A lot of on-air TV people will, try to get a job straight out of college on TV. It was really difficult when I graduated college, though. It was around, the economy wasn't doing well, and there were a lot of people who had degrees in my field, which is journalism, who just couldn't find jobs. And when I found a good, stable job, I decided, yep, going with that. Because all around me, people were getting laid off in TV news specifically. And so I've been fortunate enough to be able to maintain employment ever since I graduated college in my chosen career field, which I feel like is not common, especially for people who majored in journalism these days. But eventually I decided I wanted to do something different. I wanted to really be telling stories, and I thought the best way for me to be able to do that was to be in the field. And then I kept getting nudges from people I would meet in my life, you should do TV, you should, and I was like, I don't know, So eventually I bit the bullet. I went back to grad school, went to Columbia Journalism School, Graduate School of Journalism, and then the rest was history. And I will say, even if I didn't decide to be an on-air TV reporter or broadcaster, I'm not sure that I would have never had to move, because like I said, the industry has changed so much. And I know this isn't the case just for people in broadcast media. I know this is the case for people in a lot of different industries, whether it's banking or whether it's, certain business fields. Oh, especially, the tech sector. A lot of people end up having to move. So I know we're not unique in that, but when I decided that in order to really propel my career forward, I was going to need to relocate, and that meant relocating away from Jason because he wasn't about to relocate with me. It was a tough decision, but it was something that we made together, a decision we made together, and Jason has been fully supportive of it. Jason, what was it like for you when I first left?
Well, it was tough, and I tried to, as we were talking about it, be pretty clear, when we talked, and say that, we can do this, it shouldn't be a problem, make it seem like this is something that we can easily be able to overcome. But I certainly recognize that, there are a lot of challenges, and it's tough. It's tough because, I think that for most relationships, especially as they're growing, you need to have that consistency there of being able to, communicate with someone, to be able to see somebody, so it doesn't feel like you're just dating. It feels like you're actually building something together, and that's really tough when you're gone. And I remember then, when we would just get together, it was difficult sometimes, or you weren't sure I was willing to always travel just to see when we were in the same city. And now we're going to be, it was 2.5 hours or 3 hours away from each other.
Yeah, let's be clear. So when I first moved away, Jason needed to stay in New York City for his work. and other stuff. And I moved a couple hours away. But we've always been able to see each other several times a week, which is not like a lot of long distance relationships where some people live maybe across the country from each other, or they have to travel by plane to see each other. And I know it's not been easy for us, but I feel very fortunate in that at least we've been able to see each other on a pretty consistent basis, and that has definitely helped keep our love alive.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I was going with it. That it was difficult in the beginning because you just don't really know, even though you try to, not make it seem like it's going to be as difficult. But I know that we were both very committed to making sure that we saw each other as much as possible. I mean, yes, I think it's certainly a little easier where, at least for us to be able to get to each other, it was a bus ride as opposed to a plane ride. So that's certainly not the same as if people were like on different sides of the country or something like that. But I do think, we made sure we saw each other, at least three out of 4 weeks. And, it wasn't always easy because sometimes I would come in and I would see you, only be able to see you for a couple hours before you had to go to work and vice versa. But I do think that being able to actually see each other made a difference. And 2, the fact that we were both willing to actually make those treks on a regular day basis, I think kind of reaffirmed for both of us that, we're both really in it. And this wasn't something that we were, not committed to.
And it turns out we're not alone. According to a survey conducted by PricewaterhouseCoopers of 44,000 of its employees, not only are millennials more tech-savvy and global-minded than previous generations, but, quote, a balance between their personal and work lives is more important to them, end quote. That is from a Rewire article called Why More Couples Are Dating Long Distance by Hannah Black. And of course, there's a lot of factors that go into that. Us being one of the most educated generations ever, us growing up in an age of instant communication and technology, which keeps us more connected than ever. Of course, like I mentioned previously, living in a global community. These are all things that contribute to it. I think also one of the things that's a factor is feminism. I've seen this written in other articles as well, has sort of shifted, and the idea of women not only being incredibly educated, a group of people, but also understanding that their careers are also a priority and being willing to sacrifice for their careers is something that I think is encouraged more nowadays than possibly, even when my mom first had me. And one of the things that it takes to make a long distance relationship work is compromise. And that is true for just relationships in general, but it is absolutely true for people who decide to be in a long distance relationship. And I will say that, Jason and I, we haven't always agreed when it came to our relationship, but in order to support each other equally, we needed to compromise, wouldn't you say, darling?
Yeah, lots of compromise, and just trying to be understanding. And I think the other part too, and this, I don't know if I'm jumping the gun, but is just making sure that we're able to communicate with one another, like especially with all these apps every day. Obviously, getting on the phone. We don't Skype as much as actually I would probably think we could, but certainly that's something people could do. It makes it a little easier, I think, to be apart without not feeling like you're being apart.
Definitely. I think technology has absolutely helped. You did kind of jump the gun, but it's cool. Put that bookmark there, and we'll come back to that.
Yes, that's a good idea, because in doing so, we are compromising.
Yes, we are. I just wanted to say one other thing. According to a 2015 survey published in the Journal of Sex and Marital Therapy, couples,
it's my
quote,
favorite journal,
in long-distance relationships rather in long distance dating relationships are not at a disadvantage. The characteristics of the relationship and the people involved are more accurate predictors of a positive outcome than how far apart you live from one another. Isn't that amazing? I think that's pretty awesome. So essentially they're saying it doesn't matter how far apart you live from each other. What matters is the characteristics of that relationship and the people involved. And I can't agree more. I think this is certainly not something that would work for everybody. This is certainly not something that I think a majority of people could do. But I think it's definitely something certain people with certain characteristics could do. Mm-hmm. What do you think? And you know, the reason I say that is because we have like friends that we've noticed in the last like year or two that are getting into long distance relationships, and we kind of chuckle to ourselves because we think, are we making this look easy? Like, why are people that we know choosing to do this? And probably for all the reasons we mentioned previously.
Yeah, well, my thought with it is that, I mean, I think it's anything that, you know, people can do. I mean, I know a lot of people say, you know, if you're in a long distance relationship, you're doing something like that, it can't work. And what I really think it means is it just depends on how, I don't want to necessarily even say it like that. I mean, one, you have to be, again, committed to it. But two, you need to be, you know, realistic about like what the situation is. Like, again, I mean, I would like to think, and I still think that if you were here and I was in China, we would still make it work. But again, I do think that us being able to see each other as often as we do, where it's really just up to us, makes a big difference with it. But I think the other part of it is that, you know, it's not as if we just met each other for like a week or two before we got into a long distance relationship. I mean, we had some time to really get to know each other and know that, you know, this is something that we really wanted to pursue.
Yeah, and we were dating for a while before I moved away, and right. We lived together for a short period, actually, right before I moved away. But before right. that, we probably saw each other as much when we were in the same city as we do now, just given our work schedules, at least in the beginning, right?
I mean, I guess maybe, I don't remember, but if you say
we weren't, right. Like, I was in grad school when we met. Right. So we weren't seeing each other every day, and you were working. Well, yeah. You were working, and you were like in the litigation bureau. Yeah. I won't mention the agency, but you, like, every time I would come to your apartment, it would be like papers everywhere. You weren't even right. like going out that much. So definitely we didn't see each other probably as often as we did later on in our relationship. So, I mean, you know, just right. all things to keep in mind when you are deciding to do a long distance relationship is, you know, trying to establish a foundation that'll keep your relationship rock solid, because it will get hard, it will get lonely, it will get frustrating, you will have hard days, you will cry, you will wish your significant other was right there with you and they can't be. So you really need a strong foundation.
Yeah, and even to that point, I mean, that's part of it that makes it difficult, but still enough that I think you can make it strong, where, you know, when someone else is having a bad day, one, that person needs to know that they can still reach out to you, that they're not just bothering you or anything like that. Two, you know, even if you have other stuff going on, even if it's just for a couple minutes and you can't have like an hour conversation, you still got to make sure you make time. Because again, like, you know, if you're trying to start a relationship or build a relationship, people need to feel like you're together. And that's even more important when you're apart. You know, you need to feel like, you know, you're still one, and that just comes from a lot of communication, which is really funny because I don't think I'd ever be talking about communication.
You're a pretty communicative sort of person.
No, yeah, that's true. But
speaking of communication, there are, luckily, in 2019, a bunch of different apps that make it super easy.
Great assist by Jason.
Yes, we're going to go back to your bookmark. That make it pretty easy to communicate and stay in touch and connected with your long distance lover. Mm-hmm. In fact, going back to that Rewire article I mentioned earlier. Sultry. Yeah, it has a couple of apps it suggests for couples. In fact, there's an app called Couple, which provides an intimate social media experience for two and can help long distance couples create a digital space just for themselves. You can even kiss using your thumbs via your smartphone screens. Um, Other couples, they have a weekly online date night if you can't get to each other that week. Also, using things like Google Hangouts, screen sharing apps to watch movies together is another option.
Huh.
So, a bunch of different things you can use. I will say that Jason and I, we're pretty like simple when it comes to the technology. I think we might video chat sometimes when we can't see each other. But for the most part, we use like the regular telephone.
Messages.
Messages, yeah. Texting or, messaging through different apps. I think whatever you decide to do, just as long as constant communication is part of your dynamic, I'm not saying you should bother the person so that they can't get their work done or, your communication becomes disruptive in your lives. But keeping it creative and fun is great if it works for you. If not, if you're like us and you're pretty simple about it, that's also great, just as long as communication is definitely a huge part of your equation.
Right. And of course, I feel like we'd remiss if we didn't mention that a big part of it also has to do with trust. I mean, if we're always worried about like what the other person is doing or what have you, that can eat at you because you never see the person, or I don't want to say you never see the person, but it that's not something that you can really control as much, and that you're not going to be seeing everyone every day or what have you, and you just kind of have to trust the other person that you're both in it together and that you're going to make it happen. And the other thing I would just say is, even though we haven't even fully gotten there yet, I feel like it's also important to have a plan, or at least for us, it's to have a plan where that, while we may be long distance now, there is a plan to not be long distance sometime.
Again, going back to my earlier point, This is not a forever solution.
Yeah, because then you're like, all right, this may be a little tough, but we are getting to a certain point, and we're getting. But actually, even as you're saying that, that as well. I mean, I think the one thing that maybe has worked for us is that once we decided that we're in this for the long haul, we decided we're in this for the long haul. It's not as a point where we're saying, well, man, this is really tough. Do I really want to be with this person? Well, or at least let me talk for myself. We're in a spot where we're never thinking, I don't know if I still want to do this. And I think that kind of changes your thinking. It's not about, do I want to, or I could be doing something else. It's more like, well, what do we got to do to make this happen, or what do we have to do to make it work, and making it a little bit more solutions oriented as opposed to, do I like doing this or do I not like doing this? And at least so far, I think that's helped us get to here, because we've been long distance for like almost 3 years.
Yeah. Hopefully not much longer.
Right. I was saying a
plan. Again, we have a plan.
We have a quote unquote plan.
Yes, and this is temporary. Just want to talk about one thing. So I also want to reference a Mashable article. It's called "Millennials Have Taken the Heartbreak Out of the Long Distance Relationship." And it makes a really good point when it talks about technology. There are a bunch of apps, of course, that some of them we mentioned earlier, that help the communication and keeping it constant in your relationship. There's an app called Let's Gaze. It allows you to see your partner's face as you watch the same film together on your computer. But one point the article makes, and actually seems like an expert makes, is that technology is a poor replacement for true intimacy. So while technology can help, do not think it can replace that intimacy. And it actually, there's a quote in here. It says, quote, "Our brains communicate with far more than words. We unconsciously communicate through touch, smell, body language, vocal tone, and facial expression. Much of this is subtle and can't be picked up via video." So just keep that in mind. Technology should be, I guess, some sort of supplement to your relationship, but it should not replace the intimacy and the connectivity that two human beings can have with one another.
Yeah.
Okay. Guess you agree.
I agree.
I think you had some tips also, right, for helping our peers who are in long distance relationships stay together through thick and thin.
Yes, I did, but also similar to I have an article to learn some stuff from. One is,
What's the article called?
It's called Life Hack: 21 Best Tips on Making a Long Distance Relationship Work.
By who? What publication?
By Life Hack.
Okay.
By Key Nigel.
Okay.
And first one said avoid excessive communication. So it's true. Or you want to communicate, but again, not where it's starting to feel like a chore, but just so you guys are getting together. And two, this is very very deep. It has this quote as, if you want to live together, you first need to learn how to live apart.
Hey!
By Anonymous.
Done. Done.
So there you go.
We are on our way.
So I'm not exactly sure what all that means, but
It means that we're okay. We're going to be okay. We're doing it the right way.
Right. Says, I think this is a good one. It says, set some ground rules to manage your expectations. I mean, obviously, you won't be able to see each other every day or what have you, but, I do think it's important to try to make like a real, like aggressive plan to see each other.
Effort.
Yeah, an effort to make sure that you're there, because, again, you don't want to make it feel like, you're just dating or you're, I guess it depends on where you are in your relationship. You don't want to feel like you're moving backwards. That's really what I'm trying to say. You want to make sure that you're either at the same point or even more. And then, let's see, like I said, they're 21, so we won't go through all of these. But let me see, what's another one that says that's good.
Doing things together is definitely key.
Yeah.
I think sometimes when you're in a long distance relationship, when you see each other, all you want to do is be together. But that can sort of create a routine where you just sort of lock yourselves, in a house or a residence and don't do much. And you kind of don't want to do that. Like, it's fine, Netflix and chill, great, love it. But you also need to make sure that you maintain that element of spontaneity, because that's going to help keep the spark and the fire going in your relationship. And again, in 2019, it's so easy to just watch TV wherever we are or look at our phones or whatever. We can be entertained anywhere remotely, but it's really great to get outdoors or get out of your house and do things together.
Yeah, exactly. And let's see, I don't know. Let's see. What else we got here?
Know each other's schedules. That is pretty key, actually.
That's true. Even though I feel like at least I never know your schedule.
I know, but keep the other person at least in the loop about your schedule, especially if you're not living in the same city or municipality.
Right. Oh, and I don't see it necessarily on here, but I would also recommend is, be patient with each other.
Yeah, definitely.
Because people are going to plan to talk at this time or this, and it's not always going to work out. You can't be rigid about it, but I think you gotta have the the emotional intelligence to know when someone is blowing you off versus when someone is making an effort, but kind of the the life stuff gets in the way, whether you have a meeting that goes long or you have to go to like a work event after or what have you, or somebody just falls asleep because you're trying and you're just somebody's tired. You want to work at it and you want to make it happen, but you also want to be patient, because the last thing you want to do is make your relationship feel like more of a responsibility as opposed to something that you're trying to grow with someone you care about.
Absolutely. Any more life hacks? Life partner?
I think like another 14, but let's see, it says have a goal in mind, make sure you visit one another, do similar things. I do think that is one thing, and this kind of goes to do similar things and do things together, which I think you kind of started mentioning about some of the apps and things you can do. But I do think that there's something powerful in making it like a unique relationship. And whatever it is that you're doing that makes it not like relationships you had before, I think makes it, more like customized and more personal. So, whatever it is, look at it as an opportunity to make this relationship not like others. And yeah, that sounds right to me.
Yeah. So definitely a lot of things you can do to keep your relationship vibrant and definitely youthful. I think one of the things that's important, especially being married, is what I've realized at least, is that youth is a state of mind, right? It's not so much about your age. And if you can keep your relationship youthful, meaning that you always want to grow together, you always want to learn more about one another, that doesn't stop when you're together for a long time. It certainly doesn't stop when you get married. And it definitely should not stop if you're in a long distance relationship. And I don't know, I feel like being in a long distance relationship helps me also appreciate what we do have more, because we don't have it at our fingertips when we necessarily want it. Like, I can't just say, hey, meet you home for dinner at 6 p.m. every night. Maybe some nights of the week I can, but I can't say that every night. And it really makes me appreciate those nights and those days where we are together. Perhaps more than I would if we were in a long distance relationship.
It's true. It's kind of like having like a nice little mini vacation every time you see each other.
You're always looking forward to seeing that person because you haven't seen them maybe in several days. And for other people who are in longer distance relationships, maybe you haven't seen them for several weeks or even several months. So it always gives you something to look forward to.
I agree.
I think we did good here today.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I hope we were helpful for everybody listening, and I hope that you know that being in a long distance relationship, yes, it can be hard, but it is absolutely doable. And luckily, we live in a day and age where there are so many tools at our fingertips that help us do it. But again, it's temporary, not permanent. Anyway, thanks everybody for listening. Keep up with us on social media. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. On Instagram, we are at Skooled Podcast. On Twitter, we are at Skooled Podcast. And on Facebook, we are Skooled. Just search Skooled.
Well, Nia, I think we just got schooled.
I think you schooled us.
Okay.
Anyway, bye guys.
Bye.